Good morning, everyone, and welcome for this Simio webinar series. So before we start our webinar, let me first give you some reminders for our participants who are joining on YouTube Live. First is that register online to receive updates from Simio. So we thank everyone who registered in our webinar series. And then type your questions in the comment section. You will see that for those who are participating in YouTube, it's on the right side of your screen. Type your questions and comments using that feature. When you do that, please state your name and organization so that we can recognize you. And we shall be flashing those questions at the open forum, which will be done after the plenary speakers have presented. At this point, I'd like to introduce our opening remarks. I would like to invite Dr. Benno Boer, Chief Natural Sciences Section, UNESCO Bangkok Office, to give the opening remarks. Dr. Benno, you now have the floor.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Happy World Environment Day. Welcome to you, the biodiversity conscious and responsible audience, and our distinguished speakers to celebrate World Environment Day 2020. Let me thank CMU for inviting UNESCO and for organizing this event, COVID-19 Effects on Biodiversity, Science Education Reimagined. In my opening remarks, I have 3 points I would like to share with you. Number one, COVID-19 is an acute pandemic crisis. More than 6.6 million people have been infected and almost 400,000 lives have been lost globally. In the same time, we must not forget that there's a lot of other crises as well. There is enormous biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution in the world. And this is not new. This is going on since many decades, by the way. These crises are massive threats to human living. They already affect food, water, and energy security. They have an impact on health and medical preparedness. They cause the migration of people. These crises will not go away by themselves, and future pandemics are likely to happen again. We had them in the past, we have them now, and we will have more in the future. We have to form a coalition with nature. We are part of nature. With adequate funding for science and education. It will only work with science and education and educated participation of people. Number two, we have already places for a harmony between people and nature. UNESCO warned against the exploitation of natural resources in 1971. That is almost 50 years ago. The World Network of Biosphere Reserves was born. Places for natural conservation and human living. People in harmony with nature. These places function based on science and education, and again, the participation of people. Number three, I'm extremely happy to let you know that UNESCO has partnered with CMEO on the Plastic Initiative and the UNESCO Green Academies. These programs aim to retrofit schools into environmentally friendly places, providing green skills to students and teachers and their communities, and to keep our cities, rivers, coasts, and oceans clean. If you imagine we have almost 3 million schools in the world, we can reach billions of students together. This has to be science and education, and it will not work without science. Pandemics, biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution are real. We have to do much more about it, and we need a proactive approach and not only a reactive approach. Let me now introduce to you the moderator, Dr. Jesus Fernandez in Indonesia. Dr. Jess holds BSc, MSc, and PhD degrees. He serves as the Deputy Director of the CMEO Regional Center for Food and Nutrition. He served in a number of biodiversity-relevant posts of global importance. His areas of specialization include organizational management, strategic planning, systems-based solution, and much more. He was recognized as one of the outstanding alumni of the University of the Philippines. So, salamat po. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jess Fernandez. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Benno, our partner from UNESCO, the Chief of Natural Sciences, UNESCO Bangkok, Thailand. Dr. Jess, we cannot hear you clearly, so I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Yu Yvonne, researcher from United Nations University. Dr. Yvonne, please share your presentation.
Hey everyone, so is it clear to you?
Very clear, Dr. Yvonne.
Okay, so I will start first then. A very good afternoon from Tokyo, Japan. My name is Yvonne, and I'm from the United Nations University, but I'm actually Singaporean. So hi to all Southeast Asian friends and to all others who are watching our webinar today on YouTube or in the chat room. Thank you for spending time with us today on World Environment Day and spending your time to learn about biodiversity. So my talk today will be on biodiversity for One Health, making transformative change through education. So for those of you who may not be familiar with biodiversity, so this is the definition by the Convention of Biological Diversity, or CBD. Well, basically, biodiversity means the variability among living organisms. And when we talk about biodiversity, we are really talking about three components, which is genetic, species, and ecosystem diversity. Well, sometimes we like to refer biodiversity to humans and biodiversity, but actually we are really part of biodiversity. But unfortunately, I think the COVID situation has painfully alerted us, or if not, has for the first time made us realize that how important biodiversity is to our human health. In fact, the WHO and CBD has put together this biodiversity and human health tree, which you can see on the left, last year for the International Biodiversity Day, to emphasize how biodiversity is important to the health of for us and for nature. But unfortunately, we didn't take the hint or warning seriously, and then now we have the COVID situation. So WWF has to come out again and stress really strongly that we really have to take care of our nature and biodiversity. If not, we will be on our way to more epidemics or pandemic outbreaks in the future, including the risk of zoonosis diseases. Well, zoonosis is the animal-originated disease that's transmitted to humans. But this is not new, as Dr. Benno has pointed out. We have been dealing with this for centuries and decades, but incidences have arisen more in recent years. And the UNEP, United Nations Environment Plan, on your right, has put together this infographic highlighting some of the scenarios that would lead to such a case. And it's really not about just consuming animals. It's part of the reason, perhaps, but it's also about us, how we use our environment, how we alter and change the habitats where wildlife stay, and we stress the animals so they develop disease. And by bringing together our living space closer to them, we also stand the risk. So biodiversity is really the basis of our health. And if there's a loss to biodiversity, it threatens our health. So all the more now, we need to take this One Health approach in thinking about our relationship with nature. Basically, the One Health approach recognizes that the health of the people and the animals and the environment is highly connected, closely connected. So there's really no you and me, it's One Health. There's only one. And to do that, the WHO encouraged us to work across all levels of governance, research, and actions with multiple sectors to communicate and work together better. So it's really about promoting more communication, coordination, and collaboration across all sectors, recognizing that we are all in this together. And biodiversity is just not only about human health, it also underpins the sustainability of our planet. If you look at this SDGs, wedding cake, SDGs are the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The Stockholm Resilience Center sums it up very well here. And to say that the relationship among the 17 goals, as you can see here, the society and economic-based activities are actually built upon the biodiversity sphere-related goals, which is our natural capital. And what does this mean? This means that the biosphere is the foundation of our sustainability. And biodiversity is actually a key element among all these 4 biospheres-related SDGs. So it is a connector and, in a sense, a health indicator of our biosphere. Well, but the bad news is, folks, we know now biodiversity is not in crisis. A very important and influential global assessment on biodiversity was released by IPBEST, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. IPBES has warned us that 1 out of 8 million of known living species now are going to be extinct over the next few decades. Well, you may think that, 1 out of 8 is 12.5%, but really it's not about the numbers. What if these 12.5% are critical key species in our ecosystems, in our food chain? So numbers actually does not really reflect really the magnitude of the problem, but it's nonetheless it's something that we should worry about. And it has happened so because in the way we use our land and the way we use our marine resources, and very often biodiversity and are protected by local and indigenous peoples, but they are also at the threat to be able to conserve the biodiversity because of the way we develop and other priorities we have for. So the same IPBES reports also tell us that there are 5 key drivers of global biodiversity loss. Mainly, first, changes in land and sea use. Second, direct exploitations of organisms, overuse exploitation. 3, climate change impacts. 4, pollution of all sorts we can think of. And 5, invasive alien species. Today, I think our panelists will be sharing with you their experiences on dealing with this. So I'm also looking forward to hear about their experience. But not all is lost. The IPBEST report also say that we can do something to stop this if we can bring about transformative change. So what is transformative change? The IPBEST says it means a fundamental system-wide reorganization across technological, economic, and social factors, including paradigms and goals and value change or shifts. Well, to me, I interpret this as essentially a whole of society effort to make dynamic changes, with us breaking away from status quo and the business as usual ways. Think about creative ways, think about more dynamic ways to work together. And to do that, first, we need the paradigm shift and the change of our usual mindsets. And this change has to occur not only on the individual consciousness level, we have to be translated into action, into our behaviors. It has then also need a structural change of the society to enable that individual action to be taken. But first, to do that, coming back to the basics, we need to first change the way we learn so that we can change the way we think. And then we must think that we, every individual, you watching the YouTube now, that all of us can be an agent of change. And how do we do that? At the United Nations University, we strongly believe that we can make transformative change through education on biodiversity, especially working with the communities. So we promote community-based lifelong learning. Education does not have to really take place in the classrooms only. Well, with the COVID situation, we can even learn from home. But the best case scenario is that we can be at the ground and we learn from the ground, working with communities. And it doesn't have to be students, young kids that have education. It has to be a lifelong learning education. And we need to involve the resource holders. Resource not meaning only the natural resource holders, but most importantly, the knowledge holders. And very often women and also indigenous peoples and local communities, they are rich resource holders. We need to get them involved more and learn from them so that we can appreciate the multiple values of nature, not only for environmental conservation, but not only for economic purposes, but also on the cultural, societal, and spiritual level. So with that, from the communities, we also can learn about the knowledge, but we should bridge this knowledge together with science. And to do that, we need multidisciplinary action, research, and collaboration, and then all multi-sectoral can come together and collaborate. And this collaboration should not stop only at the local level. We should then step up to regional and international exchange. And most importantly, we should engage our youth and empower them to be the agents of change. At the United Nations University, we run the Partnership for the Satayama Initiative, which we promote all these principles for community-based learning. And also, I know that the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity is doing excellent work on engaging the communities in ASEAN and also our youth. So you may be interested to find out more how you can also be part of that agent of change working with ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. To sum up, I would like to say that it's making this transformative change is really about knowledge weaving, putting all our knowledge together, but through co-design, co-create, and co-learning. So my last slide, friends, there's no more time better now than now. The time is for nature. 2020 is said to be the super year for nature, for biodiversity, for the oceans, and for climate change. And regardless whether it's the One Health approach or transformative change that I've been talking about, I think the moral of the story is that we need this whole of society effort. That you and I can make a difference, and that we can do it better through promoting communication, coordination, and collaboration across all sectors. And to do that, first we need to reinvent the way we think, learn, and working together. And COVID, well, it's a crisis, but I think it also provides us the opportunity to reflect and to build back better for our people and our planet. And in the spirit of the United Nations SDGs, in this process, we should bear in mind that we will leave no one behind. And with that, key points, I pass the baton on to our panelists. And thank you for joining us. Happy World Environment Day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yvonne, for that very insightful presentation. And yes, indeed, this is a time for nature once again. So we would like to listen now to our panelists. And first on our list is the director of the Simeo Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, or CIRCA, and also a member of the National Assembly of Science and Technology of the Philippines. So now listen to Dr. Glenn Gregorio to talk about agricultural innovation for sustainable agricultural system.
Good morning.
Gregorio?
Good morning. Thank you, Jess. And thank you for listening. Thank you for everyone. So, good day from SHRCA, Southeast Asia Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, the Philippines. What I know is about agricultural innovation for sustainable agriculture food system. I have to check my PowerPoint. Okay. Sorry. So, okay. Agriculture is considered to be a major driver for biodiversity loss. For many years, agriculture has been disrupting biodiversity in various ways. For instance, agriculture affects biodiversity right from the moment that the soil is plowed during land preparation to when unregulated chemicals are applied and down to when other plants are removed to pave way for monoculture. The list of this list grows longer as we harvest and consume resources. Yes, agriculture affects biodiversity in many ways. But what I want to do today is to share how we could achieve sustainable food systems while conserving biodiversity. It's a complicated task. And it is through agricultural innovation. If you say agriculture actually is the culmination of science and technology shaped by communing with nature, is the point where nature, human technology, and labor intersect to create a new value. So I want to share to you our very latest publication. It's a published paper on uh, assessing the impact of COVID pandemic on agriculture production in Southeast Asia toward transformative change in agricultural food system. So just the highlight of this one, we say here that it's a disruption in agriculture food system creates supply and demand shock on economic performance and food security. Also, it's highlighted that COVID-19 pandemic resulted in 3.11% or 17 million tons of reduction in aggregate volume of production due to the decline in agricultural farm labor. This affects more than 100 million people. And this resulted in 1.4% decrease in the gross domestic product of the Southeast Asia, equivalent to 3.76 billion US dollars. So we can better appreciate the impact of COVID-19, or not appreciate in a positive way, if we look into the food security situation in Southeast Asia. To do so, let's look at this graph, the Global Food Security Index. So the higher the Global Food Security Index score of a country, the more food secure it is. So based on the data from 2015 to 2019, the food security conditions of Southeast Asian countries largely vary. You can see the variation there, depends upon the country. And you have the likes of Singapore and Malaysia having very high global food security index. While these countries like Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia have relatively low GFSI score. And we could ask now, how can we strengthen agriculture in these countries to ensure food security? While looking at this graph, please be reminded by two things. First, we need to sustain the contribution of agriculture to food security goals expansion. It is not clearly regulated. It would negatively affect biodiversity. Second, we observed the increase in the Global Food Security Index score of Southeast Asian countries in 2018 to 2019. There's an increase and the expected onward increase, but it had been halted by the production reduction due to the COVID-19. So we are already increasing, but because of this COVID-19, clearly there's a need to So it should be halted by this COVID-19. In the next slide, you could see here that I am here to tell you a story of hope. Our experience with COVID-19 have surely enabled us to rethink or reimagine how we approach things like how we view agriculture and how we view food and how we view food production. Clearly, there is a need to accelerate transformation of agriculture sector so it can be fully maximized for human well-being. We at Circa have been inspired by this and have designed the 11th five-year plan to essentially accelerate transformation through agricultural innovation. I will tell you later how agricultural innovation will really have a balance of biodiversity and agriculture. The systematic integrated innovation here would require a new mindset where farming is viewed as sustainable agribusiness. This is in contrast to traditional view of farming is merely about production. We now espouse the new ecosystem thinking, circular value chain, future-proof products and services, low ecological footprint, Agri 4.0, and the need of next agricultural rural development, transformative leaders for Southeast Asia. So we have all the challenges and opportunities, and most of these have been done by Yvonne. So you could see here from the challenges of this is the genetic erosion, climate change, research and development support, and the knowledge gap. But we look at this as opportunities also, especially the biodiversity as a source of genetic material for improved crops, resistance to pests and diseases, and climate change adaptation. And many other opportunities to especially contribute to health and nutrition. In the next slide, I could say here is this figure shows the sorry, I think I have lost the other slide. Okay. In this slide, I will show in this slide, I want to show now the agricultural innovation and biodiversity conservation. It's a win-win proposition for Southeast Asia. Agriculture is a major driver for biodiversity loss, but making it sustainable through agricultural innovation promotes and enriches biodiversity to ensure high quantity and quality and sustainability of environmental goods and services. Again, the metrics to attain agricultural productivity and biodiversity conservation must be productivity, stability, sustainability, and equitability. So it should be appreciating what human well-being is underpinned by biodiversity-rich agricultural food systems and would be critical in wielding holistic agricultural innovation across food supply chain. So in here, I would just want to say that this figure shows the interlink between or interrelationship between and among different levels of biodiversity with agro-biodiversity and agro-innovation measures and intervention. You could see here the different aspect. I could not explain much in here, but we will be sharing these slides to everyone. First, it is important to remember that agro-biodiversity is the component of biodiversity. So we would never separate agriculture from biodiversity discussions. Second, balancing of agriculture and biodiversity goal would be achieved by set of agro-innovation measures each level of biodiversity, ecosystem, species, and genetic level. So as a director of Circa, we have steered the center to identify and design an integrated and systematic agro-innovation system to balance agriculture and biodiversity. For instance, Circa has been implementing projects like related to landscape jurisdictional approach, farm clustering, ridge to reef, circular value chain, conservation, agriculture, and urban agriculture, among others. All the species level agro-innovation would include good agricultural practices, climate smart species and varieties, traditional varieties conservation, And as a geneticist myself, I can say a lot about agro-innovation at the genetic level, such as genetic breeding stock, in situ and ex situ conservation, gene banking, conservation, designer genes, among others. What
Dr.
we
Glenn,
need
you
now,
need to wrap up your presentation
okay.
quickly.
What we need now is really the support from local capacity at the production point, promote incentive system to support innovation studies and activities to improve production and post-production efficiency and promote value chain. And also at the Imagine, I think this is my last slide, Imagine environmental education. As consumer, we are more aware of the intricate link between the plate and the farms. Responsible consumption practices and lifestyle must be actively promoted through lifelong education. Sustaining more targeted capacity building activities is needed to support growing interest in agriculture and biodiversity conservation, where youth and women engagement need to be strengthened. At the macro level, trade policy must support food and security and biodiversity conservation. And we need the Asian economic cooperation, which is very crucial in this front. So with this, I will say that the reality of the balance between agriculture and biodiversity is won or lost at the farmer level, where application and sustainability have to be tested. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Glenn. Indeed, we need agricultural innovation to optimize the available biodiversity we have in our world that is still existing. Okay, welcome to the 3,523 YouTube watchers we have now. Wow, the number is really increasing. So we proceed to our next panelist, and she is the scientist and herbarium curator of the Simiu Biotrop, which is located in Indonesia. And she is no other than Dr. Sri Sudarmiati, to be talking about the challenges of studying plant diversity in Indonesia. It's your floor, Dr. Sri.
Thank you, Dr. Fernandez, for introducing me. Good morning from Bogor, Indonesia. I'm Sri Sudarmiati from Simiu Biotrop, Bogor. This morning, I'm going to talk about the challenges of studying biodiversity in Indonesia, focusing on the cases of invasive alien plant species. This topic I'm writing together with Dr. Sukesmi. Next, please. With any agricultural ecosystem in Indonesia related to the loss of agricultural product. And the convention is International Plant Protection Convention. While invasive alien plant species are relatively new for public, although Indonesia has ratified Convention on Biological Diversity in 1994. Invasive alien species concerned with the loss of biodiversity in natural ecosystem. In Indonesia, the record in 2005, the origin of the introduced plant species or introduced species is recorded about 2,000 species. And among this, 17.5% of it indicated as invasive one, about 300 species. Next, please. This is an example of invasion of plant in Bukit Barisan Selatan National Park, Sumatra. Meremia peltata dominated the vegetation. It prevents regeneration of local species, which happen to be commercial trees such as dipterocarp species. Next. Indonesian government has issued the regulation in the form of Decree of the Minister of Environment and Forestry Republic Indonesia on the invasive species. This invasive species also included plant, animal, and microorganisms. Here, I'm going to discuss about only plant. This decree of minister consisted 4 chapters. First, general definition. Second, management of invasive species. Third, definition of amendment. Fourth, implementation. The decree was issued on the 6th of December 2006. 2016. Next. Following the issuance of the ministerial decree, generates national strategy and action plans on the invasive species. First, prevention, early detection and rapid response, control and mitigation, eradication and restoration, awareness and community education, capacity building, database management, national and international cooperation. Semiobiotop contributing on the first prevention, early detection and response, and rapid response, control and mitigation, awareness and community education, capacity buildings, national and international cooperation. Further detailed instruction, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry issue another instruction by the DG of Natural Resources and Ecology of the Ministry of Environment and Forestry issue a decision letter that risk analysis to prioritize pest-based invasive plant species and the development of preventive measures as guided by IG Biodiversity Target number 9 and early detection system and rapid responses. The manager and forest ecosystem in the protective forests are trained by Biotop and Forest to carry out those techniques, how to identify the invasive alien plant species, to evaluate their invasiveness, and how much cost to contain them. The evaluation of this will generate the way how to control the mentioned species. Our experience in giving general lectures at university level in 2006, from the lecture at 5 universities, 3 in Java, 2 outside Java, on the management of invasive alien plant species, the responses of some participants show that they were not familiar yet with invasive alien plant species. However, they are familiar with wheat and agricultural ecosystem. With these responses, we believe that invasive alien species must be understood better by introducing the plant and other members of invasive species early in formal education. With those responses, we believe that invasive alien species must be understood better by introducing the plant and other members of invasive species early in formal education. I repeat it again. The curriculum at primary and secondary school in Indonesia. At the primary school, the topic on the plant is under the natural sciences. Under the natural sciences, students should be introduced the native plants and introduced plant. It can be give the example of their surrounding school on this. And the secondary school level concept on ecological specification must be introduced. However, when the plant is taken out from its ecosystem and planted in another ecosystem, it may become invasive. This plant is invasive, competing out local species, damaging and altering the local ecosystem, impacting negatively on biodiversity, economy, health, and social life of human beings. Right? At the high school and university level, the student should understand what invasive alien species is, how to control and manage this invasive alien plant species. An example of the famous water hyacinth, which is invaded most of the water ecosystem, how to predict orange plant become invasive, follow regulation to avoid spreading those foreign plants that may be invasive. We have to work together internationally to manage our environment carefully to avoid the emergence of invasive alien species. Convention on biological diversity should be observed when transferring an organism from one place to another. Next. Our current situation during the COVID-19 pandemic, almost no activities on the research, control, training, and other activities of invasive alien plant species. While in the field, invasive alien plant species keep on growing and growing without any control. Invasive alien plant species must be introduced early in the primary school and up to support the process of awareness and public education. This, this is an example of the invasion of water hyacinth in water ecosystem. And the second one is the invasion of the Acacia nilotica at the savanna, the only savanna in Java, that reducing the grazing area of the herbivore. And the last picture is also the invasive plant species at Baluran National Park, which is also reducing the grazing area of the herbivore. Time is up. I hope this is enough to incite you to comment on this very short presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sri Sudarmiati. I learned a lot about invasive alien species when I was in Simeo Biotrop. Thank you very much for those insightful presentation. And we now move from Indonesia to Thailand for our next panelist. And we have Associate Professor Dr. Krisana Dets, who is the Director of the CEO for Eco-Informatics and Assisting Dean on Research of School of Science of the Walilalak University in Thailand. He will talk about STEM education through conservation biology. Take it away, Dr. Krisana Det.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jess. And good morning for Southeast Asia countries, and good day for the rest of the world, because I'm not sure which the time, actually there are. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to give this talk. And also, I would like to thank Simeo STEM Center, Dr. Ponpan, for also giving me this opportunity. I'm come from the COE, actually abbreviation for Center of Excellence for Eco-Informatics at Walilalak University. Our center actually doing research on the ecosystem services that actually have application for tourism, smart farm, smart medicine, and also many have actually talked about this for the agricultural application. Since I'm from Walilalak University, we are actually located at the Nakhon Thammarat, is right on the peninsula of Thailand. So we have really diverse ecosystem. I can test my, training and exercise from coral reef to up to the mountain of tropical rainforest. This is my Facebook. If anyone would like to connect with me, you can do so by just type in my name after facebook.com. Okay. At our center, we actually use a lot of technology and also develop many of technology our own. Okay. We use sensor technology for our eco-informatics application, research, and training. We have sensors, all sort of sensors, ranging from underwater and under the sea to up in the mountain in the cloud forest. And the recent development on internet has produced a very successful, very easy to use to educate youngsters. It's called the IoT stuff. We also using them as well. And also the quick development in the past, maybe like 5 years, is the drone. We also use drone mapping technology to help our conservation efforts. And because of the data is already enough, big enough, many people call it big data. So the machine learning and AI has come into place. And the tools and the technology make them very easy to students and teachers. So why STEM education? I found that STEM plus the ecosystem can create what we call value co-creation. That means what students and teachers are doing at their own backyards can have value. Okay, if science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are separated, it's so difficult for them to create value of their studies. And with the recent development in the social media, as you already know, and we are actually using them, is YouTube. This also accelerates the growth and the connectivity amongst STEM centers, among STEM schools and STEM students. For our work at our center, we actually give you here at this talk some of the system that we are actually working on is coral reef, some in the tropical rainforest at the back of our university, Valak University. We also have some application for marine mammals and of course, smart agriculture or smart farming. So when we have integrative approach, students and teachers can move from study, from the book into the real solutions. And with the application of the advanced analytics, machine learning, and intelligence, cloud technology, Internet of Things technology, computing of things technology, sensor and drones, big data and deep learning, all this can be very meaningful to students and teachers. So this is just like, a map of what we actually been doing. Some use the PM2.5 sensor to study the problem in Bangkok. You probably have known this, okay? And we actually have the GLOBE program, which is NASA education program, to develop what we call mosquito app, okay? And that actually been used worldwide. These are some of the results actually some of them are research that we actually doing in the past years. We actually put like underwater camera. This is the coral reef, and you can see all the features. Okay, sometimes there are some swimmers, enjoying the beaches, also shown up in our camera as well. This is some example of the eco cam, underwater eco cam. Okay, we also deploy lots of sensors like this one. It's called CTD to collect real-time data, to observe and monitor the temperature, salinity, the depth at the coral, and we can predict the bleaching event real time. And we also produce this data online real time to tourists and students as well if they want to know the water temperature at the moment. This is the side thing that we found. Actually, we can detect a minor tsunami as well, but this one is deployed after the major tsunami, okay? So when we have the small tsunami, we can actually use this one to observe and can warn people as well. The other work that we've done is using the sound to monitor the ecosystem. Sound pollution is becoming more and more problem now, and we can use that to understand the ecosystem, the animals, the time they are feeding themselves or whatever, okay? And this can apply into STEM education as well. And the drone, we can use it to do the, mapping, and we can detect like seagrasses, this dugong, catches on the beaches. The drone can do the survey, quick survey, and we can monitor the changes. and also soil erosion. Okay. This is the GLOBE program, the mosquito protocol. I will not go into the detail of this. If anyone, we can talk more later. Okay. And actually, there's lots of work going on in the smart agriculture, but we don't have much time, so I just give you some example of the smart farming technology that we are actually deploying. So, in a sense, we are using the STEM education plus the ecosystem to create the value that we call value co-creation. So the student and teacher can doing meaningful, learning activities, and we use social media to accelerate and connect people more and more across the globe and in Thailand. These are some of the activities that we're going to do with the Simeo STEM Center that Dr. Phonpan is actually organizing. And we hope we can make some changes. Thank you very much. If you have any question, you can connect me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Kristana Ditz. The kind of STEM education you are doing can truly create value to our biodiversity at the moment. We now come to the last speaker, but not the least, for today. And he is the Dean of the College of Education of the University of San Jose Recoletos in the Philippines. We'd like to welcome Dr. Gestoni Babia to talk about Teacher Education Institution's initiative on biodiversity in the lens of ESD.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, to all our viewers from Southeast Asia. I'd like to thank CIMEO UNESCO for this invitation to the joint webinar series on World Environment Day. And I also would like to thank especially Dr. Ethel Agnes Valenzuela for this opportunity. My talk actually is somehow different from the rest of the speakers because it will talk about the reflections of the practices and initiatives of biodiversity in the teacher education institutions in the Philippines, particularly in the Cebu region, in the lens of education for sustainable development. As we all know, as what our keynote speaker mentioned a while ago, that everything, the biodiversity is all about composing the variety of its life forms. So the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the food that we eat actually comprises biodiversity. And this biodiversity is really a variety of life forms on Earth. And it actually gives hope for us in the future for the society that we will actually be living in. However, there is a huge global diversity losses at present, and therefore we are actually experiencing a crisis due to a lot of human destructions and human interventions. And one of these crises that we are actually experiencing, as what also our previous speakers have mentioned, is that humans have increased the species extinction rate by as much as 3 orders of magnitude. Although the status of many unsubscribed species is poorly known, it is very difficult to trace the historicity of the final disappearances of this very rare species, and therefore there is a huge extinction lags between the impact of the threatening process and the resulting extinction. The extinction rate also of species is thought to be about 1,000 times higher than before. And the loss is even more faster than the losses after a giant meteorite wiped out dinosaurs 65 million years ago. And nature and its vital contribution to people, which together embody biodiversity and ecosystem functions and services, are actually deteriorating worldwide. And so the question that I'd like to raise for some of our participants also are coming from higher education and teacher education institutions is that, what does this imply to our future and how can we stop it? And since I am from teacher education institution per se, I should really say that the TEIs or these institutions and at the same time basic education have a pivotal role in advancing biodiversity protection. But the question is on how and in what context. In our Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDG efforts, we also have our movement for education for sustainable development. For some of you who have attended a previous session about education for sustainable development, when we talk about ESD, it's actually the vision or the process of learning about our interconnected world. And this interconnected world will focus on different issues, on the trifocal issues, such as the environmental issues, the social issues, and the economic issues. And these issues are very important in order to, number one, improve our basic education system, or it could either be to reorient our education towards sustainability. And at the same time, we have to increase public awareness on education for sustainability issues. And for us to achieve this in our basic education and teacher education context, we have therefore to review the very specific elements in order to achieve this. And first could be the content. The content is actually the knowledge element linked to issues and themes, which could actually be a starting point for discussion for sustainability issues. We also would have to look into the method and curriculum, where we will talk about and reflect about the different teaching and learning methodologies. It could also be either participatory approaches in order for us to discuss more about sustainability issues. And of course, policy, which is an element, either it could be a global, a national, or a local, or even a school-based policy pertaining to sustainability. And of course, the community, which is also a very essential element in order to address these sustainability issues. And the last but not the least is the institutional mainstreaming, which is the element for transformative leadership, where there is policy development, where there is implementation, and there is really action towards different initiatives on addressing biodiversity in the context of ESD. So how did we do this movement in the Cebu region? So as we all know that I am from University of San Jose Recoletos, and I also work as the director of ESD Center in the Philippines in USJR, and the first center of ESD in the Philippines. We actually work together with different institutions such as Cebu Normal University, Philippine Normal University, and Cebu Technological University, as well as our other partners who will work into addressing all these issues. And I should say that this is a part of a collaborative transformation wherein every institutions and organizations are working together to address these. Now, how did we specifically do it in our own context? We do a lot of curriculum integration and local partnerships. We also look into the strengthening of our research and development in biodiversity. We also incorporate sustainability and conservation across discipline, and we also foster international linkages on sustainability on education. Now, how particularly these different institutions have used these particular steps in order to address these? We do a lot of curriculum integration and partnerships, and for this example, perhaps, Philippine Normal University Visayas had partnered with fisher folks, local government units, ESD-based universities, teachers, and students in order to reverse the degradation and the loss of mangrove forest wetlands and their associated coastal ecosystem. What is good about this practice is that different students, even teacher education students or pre-service and in-service teachers, are working together with collaboration with these local community stakeholders. Aside from curriculum integration and partnership, another pivotal role is to strengthen the research and development in biodiversity issues, which Cebu Technological University has been doing. So the particular university conducts research-based initiatives on biodiversity. And since Cebu is actually a very rich island with rich natural resources, their center is focusing on the assessment of flora and fauna in biodiversity areas. And what is good about this is that the researches that are being utilized in the center are also being disseminated under the management of the teacher education faculty and pre-service teachers in the university. While we talk about the partnerships and integration to the curriculum, the research and development, another very interesting initiative is when Cebu Normal University incorporates sustainability and conservation across discipline by incorporating greening of the curriculum through their teacher training for both in-service and pre-service teachers. In other words, this competencies for sustainability and conservation was integrated into the curricula per se, and this has been reflected through their implementation of outcomes-based education principles where students gets to be immersed with human and nature connection through its program and other programs that they are doing currently. So this in turn allowed them to receive the first Lockton Legacy Award for its exemplary efforts for biodiversity protection. With the curriculum integration, partnerships, strengthening of research and sustainability, we also foster international linkages and sustainability education, which University of San Jose Recoletos has been currently doing. And this is through the Education for Sustainable Development Center, where the university has received its first Climate Reality Award for having its eco park, a 100-hectare land that will grow an estimated number of 75,000 trees by 2022. And all our other partners are also working for biodiversity concerns, such as the Ramon Aboitiz Foundation. Will they work with as part of their corporate social responsibility? Will they help industries and other companies to comply for environmental compliance certificate, as well as in giving and providing partnerships with different institutions across the Philippines for planting of different mangroves and upland native plant trees? And thus, there
One
must.
more minute, Dr. Bobia, to wrap up your presentation.
Thank you very much. They have all these advocacy milestones where they planted 1,275,000 trees and upland native trees for about 8 million. And so because of this, what will become the new normal or trends in protecting biodiversity, just like what we do in the university, is to have more webinar series and collaborations with different institutions across Southeast Asia for cross-cultural experiences. And with this, I'd like to stop my presentation by giving us a reminder for all of us that the world never stopped protecting us. We're actually the ones stopping the world if our efforts are not leading us to its sustainability, protection, and restoration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bobia, for sharing your university's experience in incorporating all the elements of ESD for biodiversity conservation in the Philippines. Those are very insightful. We have heard all the presentations, and I think we have acquired a lot of information from all our speakers, and we now go for the question and answer portion for this webinar. And I would like to call on our colleagues from CMEO Secretariat to post the questions selected from the participants. I believe we have a lot of questions from the participants, but we just selected few in the interest of time. So here are the questions for our speakers.
Okay, so can I address this?
Please go ahead, Dr. Yvonne, and respond to the question. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think all the panelists have given us very good answers to this question of what are the key solutions that can make biodiversity conservation better. But I think there are two main principles, I think, or two ways that we can look at this. Is first, we have to recognize that nature-based solutions work better and put biodiversity at the heart of our actions, decisions, and policies. To do that, we need to think of ways to get people understand biodiversity and its values and mainstream biodiversity. And number two, which I have stressed in my presentation, is about working with the communities, because there's really no better place to learn than on the ground, as I've said. But with the COVID situation, we know that we have all been like isolated, separated. And we also know that there is this education disparity gap there, where technology doesn't go to more rural places. And so how are we going to reach the communities, and how are the communities going to reach to us? Now, as we deal with COVID, we might not be able to address that instantly, but after the COVID situation, we should also think about how then we can bridge this technology gap so that we can always be in contact and keep on learning with the communities. So that's my answer to that.
For the second question to our panelists, is it possible to develop or enhance knowledge of the whole community when it comes to dynamic change without damaging culture or preserving culture at the same time? So this came from Madeline Espiritu from Calapan City in the Philippines, and with the other participants also joining us in YouTube Live. We request our panelists to please respond.
In the
I,
case of
I could start in a short answer. Yeah, yes, we could do this one.
Yes,
Actually,
please go ahead.
there is what we call the traditional ecological knowledge, where we could use this as a starting point for any intervention related to biodiversity conservation to make sure that the culture of the local communities, particularly indigenous communities, are respected. At the same time, we will do the participatory approach in doing it. We know what's their culture, then we'll build on that, how we could integrate it to the system, because most of the time, their culture are more for biodiversity and conservation for the environment. Thank you.
okay, in the case of invasive alien plant species, the plant is in their native origin. Actually, there's no problem. There's the balance on the ecosystem. But if it changes to another ecosystem, this is a different thing. This it can become invasive. This is the transferring, especially if there's global situation where trade and movement or mobility of the people can go around very easily. It's also transferring the plant to another places and it can become invasive. That's it. Thank you.
For me, the E element in STEM education, which actually mean engineering, actually taught us when we want to do anything to nature, we have to consider possibility and practicality. And in doing so, one has to take account of the cultural or traditional practices to to approach the problem. And actually in STEM education, we urge the students to actually learn how the old people, traditional people, traditional practices that actually available for them with appropriate use of technology. I think the students and the teacher can come up with a very reasonable solution that not damaging culture. Okay, thank you.
For me, this question is very important with my talk a while ago on education for sustainable development, because the ESD should be mainstreamed or integrated into the curriculum process, whereby it does not only talk about the environment or just one piece component, but it actually talks about different issues such as environment, social cultural issues, economic issues, without actually damaging any social cultural issues that are currently affecting the society. With this particular ESD concept, this can be a very good tool in order to reorient societies towards sustainability and reorient as well how culture has been doing it in their own contexts. It's not actually the same how other culture has been doing it with the rest of the culture, but this is actually more of looking at the very best practices of different culture and work together for transformative and collaborative partnership in order to achieve what we desire for sustaining biodiversity.
Thank you so much to all our panel speakers for responding to the question. We, I think that concludes our open forum. At this point, I'd like to introduce our director, Dr. Ethel Valenzuela, to deliver the synthesis and some message for all our participants.
Well, thank you very much and happy World Environment Day to everyone. So every June 5 and every year we celebrate this very important occasion. And the theme for this year is, of course, biodiversity. We have invited experts from all over Southeast Asia and also our colleague from United Nations University from Tokyo, Japan, who is our very own expert who really hailed from Singapore to share her expertise. We learned a lot today. Actually, in our own plan, we thought of organizing our mangrove activity in Wahin this year. However, due to COVID-19 lockdown, we could not do any planting or plant saplings or anything related to biodiversity, but instead we want to advocate for more awareness because we are still on lockdown. So we can say that biodiversity is the essence of our existence. So as you heard from our keynote speaker, we need to do paradigm shift, we need to do mindset change, and we all can be agents of change. So biodiversity is a connector, a key element, and even health indicator of our ecosystems. We need a transformative change to halt biodiversity loss and of course rebuild our planet. As environment is the most important aspect to survive on this planet, humans, sometimes we tend to forget that this is really important. That without a balanced environment, life will not be sustainable. And actually, our 8 regional centers have come together to share the experts coming from each other and to do a lot of advocacies, communication, coordination, collaboration across all sectors. From Simeo Cerca as well, our director from Los Baños, we heard on academe, industry, and government models that we should practice consumption, responsible consumption, a bit of lifestyle change, continue with capacity building and awareness raising, continue to do research involving youth and women in this biodiversity conservation. And because they're the Center for Agriculture in Southeast Asia, they also have to empower farmers and rural communities. From our academe, from STEMED, our expert from Thailand and also from the Philippines, we can enhance our curriculum. We can develop good partnerships, strategic, so that both of us can work better on biodiversity issues and contributing to education for sustainable development. So we know for a fact, many of us, I think, who are here are also science teacher, as like myself, science education teacher. And well, I was updated a lot from Thailand's presentation, the new STEM education by using technology, smart farming, using also, in biodiversity issues, indigenous knowledge, smart agriculture, using Internet of Things, big data. Wow, these are really something that we should look for. This is reimagining science education, and I think STEM education is really a way to go. And utilizing drones in your activities in science classrooms and outside would be very interesting, and making use of big data and advanced analytics as well. So rather for the key message is that at this situation, we say always that, biodiversity and our planet is in crisis. And we experience from time to time climate change. So climate change brings a lot of problems like storms, floods, typhoons, drought, and other situations. But sometimes we are so busy, we could not even plant a single tree. I always think of planting or seeing one single flower, and it takes 10 to 20 years to grow a tree. But sometimes we can just destroy this. These are just the usual thinking, but we need to really change our mindset. So we can do something together. If you're just one, your impact will not be great. But look at the presentation of, from our keynote speaker and from the Philippines. Now they work with business industry partners. So we need to do something together. So we need to do awareness raising. We need to have responsibility for garbage, and we're also launching our plastic initiative with UNESCO. We can also use organic and local products. And the best thing for us, as we are mostly teachers, is to help
sensitize awareness to help educate and share efforts on sustainable development, including sustaining the biodiversity. And we can start it today. By the way, so for this particular session, joint webinar with UNESCO, many of you have asked about getting your certificate because you participated in this session. So you can email us at webinar@simeo.org. Please be sure that when you submit your reflection on this particular biodiversity webinar, you should indicate correctly your spelling for your e-certificate. And by the way, we are launching the Simeo Japan Education for Sustainable Development Award. And our theme for this year is addressing plastic problems